So welcome to nonStatic. nonStatic is was formed by Dr. Josh Beulke here. He's my brother and business partner. I'm Jon Beulke, and the reason why we started this podcast is the information that Josh that you put in the nonStatic newsletter is just great information. A lot of people, we've gotten a lot of good feedback, and we just want to get the knowledge that you have bestowed upon all of us to as many people as possible. And while we all get newsletters during the and we're deluged with our inbox and filled with newsletters, and they can kind of get lost in the shuffle. But you know what? When we're driving to work, it's great to listen to a podcast and get some knowledge and learn how to improve your life in a better way. On the way to work or on the way to class or whatever.
Yeah, well, the whole goal of nonStatic isn't not to correct you in the middle of our conversation, but it's not to dump more knowledge on people. Right. It's more about me just exploring different perspectives and ideas, what was kind of floating through my mind.
So, cut. We're going to start that over.
Okay. All right.
Welcome to nonStatic. nonStatic is a program that Dr. Josh Beulke, my brother and business partner, created to just to give you some different perspective on different topics on life, just to help gain clarity and provide practical strategies and inspiring insights for a more focused and content life.
Yeah, the whole goal with it is not to dump more knowledge on people, but it's to give people perspective. One of the things I've struggled with for a long time is, how do you find clarity in the day-to-day life? There's so many self-help books out there. There's so many different productivity systems. There's so many perspectives on mental health and well-being, for that matter. My whole goal with nonStatic is just to kind of give people perspective and kind of help them move along their journey towards clarity. I know it's an area that I haven't quite accomplished yet, and so nonStatic is actually something that helps me out, kind of focusing more on what kind of cuts through the cloudiness of our day-to-day lives, and to hopefully bring things into better perspective and better focus for all of us.
It's interesting you say that, because sometimes it feels like when you're helping other people, you're actually helping yourself too. It feels like whenever I'm helping somebody with something they're struggling with, while I'm guiding them through a challenging time, I'm actually practicing things that I've learned for myself, but don't necessarily do when I'm in a period of stress, high stress or anxiety. And so helping other people is a good way to also help yourself too.
Well, it's really related to the concept of getting outside yourself. And when we get too introverted or too inside of ourselves, it's that term of getting inside, getting in your own head. Whenever we get in our own heads, it's easy for us to go down more of a negative path or thought process. Whereas if you're focused on helping others, in your example, it's getting outside your head, and it gives you a different perspective.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's the road to wellness and to getting your total zen and just having life figured out. It's a lifelong project. None of us are ever going to get there.
It's definitely a project.
And it's sometimes it's really hard to wait to I buy all these self-help books, business books, all that kind of stuff, because either the covers look good, or it's by a well-known author like James Clear or John Maxwell.
That was a big buzz one for a long time.
Right, yeah. Habits. And the EOS or Traction, Entrepreneur Operating System or something like that.
Entrepreneurial Operating System, yep. Great books. I have them both, by the way.
Yeah, I have them all. I have them all, and most of them are not read because there's so much information to read, and that's why I really appreciate nonStatic, is because you break things down in a very good way, easily digestible and really entertaining way too. The title for this most recent newsletter was "Most People Don't Wait for the Candy."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't see these newsletters until you send them out. So it's so I get them the same time you guys do. And I'm always anxious to get them, because there's always good information. There's always going to be some cool tagline or some phrase that just really kind of helps us remember what it is that you discussed. And People don't want to wait for the candy. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well,
what
you
that
talked.
means?
It's kind of interesting you brought up those self-help books that we all buy. That hopefully we all read them. Although I would gather that most of us don't read all of them all the time.
Right.
We certainly do sometimes. But you talked a little bit about all that information in there is good, but we probably don't digest all of it. Don't read it all for that matter. We read the first couple of chapters and then that kind of goes away.
I have a really hard time finishing a book.
Yeah, and that's really what this is talking about. What I was talking about in this article is, what do we do when that motivation disappears and goes away? Human beings, we all have that initial sense of motivation to want to follow through on something. It's when we get past that point of motivation that becomes a challenge. So common New Year's resolutions may include losing weight or eating healthier, or I'm going to install this habit or that habit. Well, any one of us can eat clean for a day, or even eat clean for 2 days, or practice a new habit for a day or two. But it's kind of when we get past that point where it's no longer exciting and new and interesting, the motivation tends to disappear at that point. And that's kind of what we were talking about today. Is most people don't wait around and stick with it much beyond that motivation point.
Yeah. Do you think some of that is also due to our culture nowadays? I mean, our culture now is instant gratification.
Yeah.
And it's, I remember when I was a kid and we would my mom and dad only get our mom and dad
right.
would only get the Sunday paper, and that's where they would get their news. And of course there was like WCCO or AM radios that my dad would listen to, but nothing like we have today. And that's where I got my news. I mean, I was a kid. I just looked for the comics. But we didn't have that instant gratification of knowing what happened basically at the moment it happened.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the way some of the self-help, self-improvement, developing good lifestyle habits.
Yeah.
It's really hard because we're so conditioned to have that fishbowl mentality, just like a super short attention span. And we need to, if we ring that bell, that catalog's bell, we demand a treat right away. And if we don't get it, we lose interest. Just like
it's interesting the perspective shifts. Like you talk about the news cycle. Not to get too deep into that, but the idea of news has shifted from providing quality news to who can break something first.
Right.
And so that's kind of the downfall of the 24-hour news cycle. Is the race isn't to determine if a story is factual or if there's a quality piece to it. The focus is on who can break the news the quickest, because that generates the most interest, apparently.
It really starts to feel like it's the National Enquirer these days.
Yeah.
Most news.
Yeah, it does. It does. But to kind of get back to this is the whole goal is really to talk about motivation, how that plays a key, and how sometimes we need to do things, or I need to do things even when I'm not motivated to do them. I often run into a scenario in which I know I need to do something, but the motivation is gone. And what do you do when that happens? And that's really the character quality that really separates people that are able to achieve their goals to those who are not. A lot of times is just showing up consistently. I use the analogy of a piñata at a birthday party. So we've all been to those dreaded 5-year-old birthday parties.
It's a shadow one this summer.
It's fun to watch the kids, but it's a
lot of work.
They're a lot of work, yeah.
A lot of screaming, a lot of running.
But we've all been to ones where there's a piñata. Maybe you've even been to an adult birthday party where there's a piñata there. But, it takes quite a few rounds of beating that piñata to death before the candy comes out. And if you watch kids, kids are fascinating because they're kind of mirrors to adults in a way. But they have an attention span of maybe 2 to 3 minutes probably before they get bored. But if you watch... if you're at a birthday party next time with a piñata with kids, just kind of pay attention to how it goes. They'll all get lined up. They'll all turn around in a circle, get blindfolded. They'll go take a whack at the piñata. But one hit on a piñata won't cause it to break open, right? It takes numerous hits. And if you watch everybody cycle through that line, you're going to start to notice some kids will wander off and get bored because nothing's happening. But it's the few kids that stick around and keep beating on the piñata that ultimately get the first chance at the candy. So the whole idea was, is there anything different from the kids that stuck around for the piñata and those that didn't? Not really. It's just the few kids that really wanted the candy stuck around past the point of it being fun,
Mm-hmm.
or past the point of it being motivating. And that's really what we face with as adults in day-to-day life is some of us struggle with being willing to do the same thing over and over consistently
Mm-hmm.
beyond the point that when it's no longer fun. And that's where the challenge often comes in. That's where the work comes in, whether it's personal wellness or professional goals or your relationship goals or even family goals,
Mm-hmm.
is there's not much difference between those that are really successful in those areas and those that aren't. But the determining factor is there are those of us that are more willing to show up consistently
Mm-hmm.
in a particular area than others.
I think a lot of people, to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, is I was part of a different organization for a while. I still am, just kind of more casually. But one of the things that they would always talk about is the people who are the most successful are the people who have been rejected and turned down for an idea more than anybody else.
Sure.
They are the only ones who didn't give up. The people who win bodybuilding contests, the people who win any type of high honor recognition.
It's kind of the overnight. You're talking about the people that are overnight successes.
The overnight successes, and it takes them 30 years to get there or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones. Champions are recognized in the ring. They're not recognized when they're running in the snow,
right,
when they're running in the rain, and it's just so hot out. People that can't even function. And while everyone else is inside watching TV or even doing what they need to be healthy, the champions are the ones who always put in the more time, the more effort, and there may be some genetics involved or whatever.
Yeah.
But they're the ones who didn't quit when it really came down to the grind, and where it's not fun, where they really don't want to get up. Like you said, you get up, you're at the gym by 4:45 every day, which I think is insane. But I try. I try to get up. It's so hard for me, and it's hard. And we were talking about it before, and you mentioned that the first couple months was just awful for you. It was so hard. But then now it's become a habit. It's just become part of your life, and it's just the way it is. And you even mentioned that sometimes you wake up before your alarm clock, and you miss out on those couple minutes of sleep, which sucks.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, but it's...
But that whole thing can be applied to a lot of different areas. So the first thing we always think of when you think of consistent effort is, fitness and people that have risen to the top of their game for whatever else. But, this whole concept of showing up when you don't want to applies to pretty much, can be applied to pretty much any area of your life. Whether it's healthy eating, for example. We can all stop eating the cheeseburgers for a day, but when you really crave one, are you able to say no? Or some people have very specific relationship goals. Or some people may have a goal because they're introverted of becoming more extroverted and making more connections with people. But so you can really apply this idea of motivation and consistency to any area. Say, for example, somebody has a desire to make their marriage stronger, for example. You can break that down to a goal, and that's all well and good, but you can have the most well-written goal for your marriage relationship, but really the success of that goal really boils down to, are you willing to show up every single day and do the same thing consistently over and over and over that you have decided is what you need to do to accomplish that. And so it's the sustaining that behavior over time is what really separates people that can achieve their goals in a particular area to those that maybe feel that they're not getting any traction. And it's really it's those in-between areas that nobody else sees, where no one sees all that hard work you're putting in. That's where the progress is really made.
Yeah, it always seems that you've heard the phrase, it's always dark, it's always darkest before the morning, or when you're in the deepest valley, don't stop there, keep going, don't, because things are always better on the other side. And I've noticed myself that anytime I'm dealing with something that's hard for me to do, or develop a habit of, or a lifestyle change, or really some concerning life event, I've always found that if I persevere and I keep pushing through, I always always come out way better in the end.
Yeah.
Even if everything seems bleak, and if I'm not getting any traction, if it's not going anywhere, that's when the average person stops.
Mm-hmm.
Is when they don't see the results.
Yeah.
But every time you don't give up, every time you push forward and doing the thing, whatever it is, and you're not seeing any results from it, when you don't give up, what you're doing is you're making a deposit into your belief bank, or whatever you want to call it, and you're believing in yourself a little bit more. You're believing in your determination a little bit more, and because doing anything that's worthwhile is not going to be easy.
Right.
It's easy for us to get jealous of those who are successful because, oh my gosh, they have it so easy, overnight success. No, they were just willing to do the really hard things, the challenging things. They were, and no matter what the cost, they weren't willing to give up.
Well, I also think there's an
consistent.
Yeah, not giving up and being consistent when nobody sees what they're doing.
Right.
And I'm not saying that we're all hungry for attention, but I think
we all want recognition.
Right. And the challenge, I shouldn't say the problem, but the challenge we have in our very connected world is we just see highlights of our lives, right? We see highlights of other people's lives.
Right.
People only put the highlights on their Facebook pages or on their Instagram reels. We only see the good stuff. We don't see the daily grind.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you look at people on Instagram or Facebook that try to document their consistent efforts, they're only going to show you the best part of their consistent efforts. They're not going to show you the morning that they weren't able to get up and hit the gym, or they're not going to show you the time when they're in a grumpy mood but still follow through with their relationship goal of checking in with their wife every day. People aren't gonna post that stuff.
Right.
But that's where the growth is always happening, is when, even though everything else, every ounce in our bodies or in ourselves is saying, I don't want to do this right now, we continue to go ahead and do it. That's where the change really happens, and that's where we really start to see progress. It's when other people don't see it, yet we still have decided in our minds that this is what we're going to do. That's where the growth really happens.
One thing I used to do, I need to get back into doing it, because I used to have a tendency of procrastinating and just like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do my workout tomorrow. I just want to rest from sitting in my office, sitting in my office chair.
Yeah.
Behind my desk all day, not moving around. When I get home, I'm like, I'm just too tired to work out, so I'll just do it tomorrow. One thing that I did years ago, and it worked out really, really well, is when I know what I want to accomplish, and I keep that in the forefront of my mind. As soon as I have a feeling of like, as soon as I start to think like, okay, it's time for me to work out, or it's time for me to read 10 more pages in a self-improvement book or a business book, and I really don't want to. When that thought comes in, like, oh, I just don't want to do it today, I immediately say, nope, I'm going to do it right then and there. I drop everything and then I do that thing which I don't want to do. I force myself to disregard that thought, thinking like, oh, I just don't want to do it today. So it's kind of like I don't want to say like punish myself, but I'm like, you know what? If I'm having this thought, it's not even a negative thought. It's just like, I don't want to do it today. And I'm like, I drop everything. As long as I can. Oh, this is before I had kids.
Sure.
I would drop everything, and then like, no, I'm going to do it right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was like a workout really late at night. And I would like go out there go into the gym and no one else was there, just to prove to myself that no, I'm committed in my health and well-being. And just kind of the same thing with anything else that I want to improve on.
Yeah.
And then I learned pretty quickly that I should just have a good schedule.
Well, what's important is also what you're touching on.
It worked for me.
Yeah. What's important to keep in mind is there has to be a why behind what we're doing, and that why has to be rooted in your own value system.
Right.
What my value system may be slightly different than your value system, and whoever else is watching, and that's where we as individuals really have to be focused on, is what's important and what do we as individuals value. A good example is, or a common one that we can all relate to, is our families. as those of us that are parents, when we have kids, they become a number one priority in our lives. And our value system is centered on raising those kids in the way that we feel is important. And so therefore, when they come knocking on your door at 4 a.m. in the morning, you don't even think about it. You just know that that's the right thing to do, is to get up and tend to their needs, because that's what you have determined is a value of yours, to raise healthy kids and to be present there. That's a goal that we have as parents, is to be present for our kids. And so we just don't think of it, because that's rooted in our value system, and our goal is to raise those kids to be successful adults someday. On a much less important level, that's what you have to, that's kind of the mentality you have to have with in other areas of goals, or other goals that you have for your life, is if they're not rooted in your value system, you're never going to be able to follow through on them. So if to kind of use the worn out example of physical fitness or eating healthy, why is somebody wanting to get fit, or why is somebody wanting to get healthy? And if the why is, well, because I want people out there to approve of me, it's never going to follow through.
Right.
But if the why is because I care about myself as a person, and I want to be as healthy for as long as I can for my grandkids, that's what drives me. That changes it completely. From I have to do this to please others, to this is important to me in my life for these reasons. And so I think it's, if you shift the perspective in that way and ground your goals and your desire to do something based in your own personal value system, it sticks a lot better. And that's when you're more willing to put in that hard work, when your emotional motivation is gone. But really, it kind of all boils down to that consistent effort. The difference between achieving goals and then feeling disappointed in yourself for not achieving them is just that simple, consistent showing up every day.
It's the same old. It's the worn out terminology or phrase. I'm drawing a blank on it now.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's gone, but it's okay.
But I would just kind of, maybe wrap it up, is one of the things I wrote was, our perception is that the achievement of our goals is years away, and only after complicated and difficult work. And there's nothing that can be further from the truth. The reality is that our goals and dreams are really the result of small, consistent, simple effort over time. It's the kid that consistently walks up to that piñata and hits it over and over and over and over and over until the candy falls out. The kids that hit the piñata, they're not sitting there figuring out, okay, if I hit it at a 45-degree angle rather than a 30-degree angle, and if my backswing is a little bit stronger than my forward swing, I'll get it better. No, they're just going up and hitting it. They just know they got to hit the piñata over and over and over. And it may not look pretty, but they're just going to continue doing it until they get the desired result. That's where goal achievement comes from.
They had the pain of discipline. Right. That was the phrase. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. We're going to have pain either way.
You're going to have pain either way. Just pick it.
The easier pain is to deal with the pain right now, and that's the pain of discipline. The pain of regret sucks.
Yeah.
Because once that thing that you like, if you had like a goal by like this time by this age or whatever, and you just end up not doing it, you have that pain of regret. Like, I wanted to go skydiving before I had kids, I just didn't do it. And it's not a real. This is a really small thing, really insignificant thing, but I don't have kids. I don't know that I want to do that.
You don't want to jump out of a plane?
No, I mean, I know it's safe, but it's like, so I do have a little bit of regret. Like, I should have done that when I didn't have kids yet, because if something happened to me, well, it would just been my spouse that would have to deal with the tragedy, or the rest of my family. But I don't know. That was a phrase that always kind of stuck out to me. Momentarily forgot. What key to clarity do you have? Like, what's a statement that you think would?
I think it's important to remember, and it helps me when I'm kind of faced with those situations where I just don't feel like doing anything. Believe it or not, I'm a naturally lazy person. My idea of a perfect day is laying around at home, not doing a whole lot of anything. So
that sounds nice.
By default, I tend to be rather lazy. But it's important for me to keep in mind that our character is developed in those moments when our motivation disappears. our own internal motivation is great to get a jump start on things, but it's not going to carry us through. It's our character that we have taken the time to develop that really will help us move towards our goals in life.
It's cool. What are you reading right now?
The thing I put out there, I think a lot of us have probably heard about it. John Deloney, kind of on a different topic. Dr. John Deloney, who's a Ramsey personality, put out a book last year, I believe it was, called Living a Non-Anxious Life. And
such a good book.
His ideas about anxiety and mine tend to fall in line pretty closely. And that is, anxiety isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's more about our bodies telling us, hey, something's a little off here. And that's what he talks about. If you listen to John Deloney for any length of time and read any of his information, that's what he talks a lot about, anxiety, and that it's an alarm system for our bodies. But in that book, he provides a solution or a way to set your life up so that anxiety is minimized. And so I feel that's really important, especially in today's day and age with the 24-hour news cycle. You know, and stuff's constantly sounding off in our lives. It's helpful.
Is that a second book that he wrote, or is that the first one?
No, that's his most recent one.
His most recent one, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
His stuff is great. He also has a podcast. I'm sure he probably has some newsletters too. But if you ever want to check him out, check out the Dr. John Deloney podcast. Always an entertaining listen. Very fun guy to listen. Very fun guy to listen to for sure. Yeah. Yep. So I guess that's it. If you don't have any parting words, I think we can cut the feed and call it a day and do this again next week.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks for watching the nonStatic podcast. You can find us on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, right? Spotify, or wherever you can get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe and leave us a like, a review. We don't like asking for that stuff. It's kind of like, we don't like doing it, but no. Apparently it's just what you got to do. So, good chatting with you guys. We'll see you next time.
Enjoy the journey.